Great, I got a
Oh.
pen that doesn't, oh, there we go.
All right. Oh, so we don't have to do any,
Just
no
you have
roll
the
call.
script, but no roll
Okay,
call.
good.
Yeah.
That makes it easier. All right, my name is Ed Hoops, the chairman of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. We'll now convene the December 16, 2021 meeting of the Yarmouth Conservation Commission. As required by GL Chapter 30A, Sections 18 through 25, and pursuant to Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, the public are able to attend this meeting either in person or via the alternative public access. Members of the public may watch the meeting live on Channel 18 or watch and/or participate in the meeting hosted in Zoom. The meeting notice provides necessary instructions to join the meeting via Zoom. Please note that audio, video, and screen sharing functions will be disabled for all attendees. You may request to participate by using the raise hand function. If a commission member, oh, we don't need to worry about that. Nobody's remote. All right, so I'll start the meeting by calling a quorum. Ed Hoops is here. Tom Durkin,
Here.
Patricia Mulhern,
Yeah.
Ellie Lawrence,
Here,
Rick Bishop,
Present.
Paul Huggins.
Here.
David Bernstein is absent. All right, with a quorum present, then I will call the meeting to order. Again, we are moving right into the first item on the December 16th, 2021 agenda. First is a topic of discussion. This is an informal discussion amongst the commission members only on the proposed Town of Yarmouth Riverwalk, Park, and Boardwalk.
Hello, folks. Thank you for having us this evening. My name's Eric Galley, landscape architect and planner, and with me is Laura Kraus. Turn your mic up a little bit. Just point it towards you, please. Sorry, is it? Yeah, with the mouse too. Maybe not. A little bit closer. And I think the last time we saw you all was August when we did our field walk to look at the marsh. So we wanted to come in today and talk to you a little bit about some of the project components and where we are in the process. And I'll let you do the driving.
Sure. So we know you've had a chance to look at the presentation, so we don't want to go through in too much detail, but we are going to stop and talk about a couple of aspects of the project. And if there's anything at any point that you saw while you were looking through the presentation that you'd like to discuss or bring up, by all means, stop us and let us know that you would like to discuss a certain slide or a certain facet of the project. So to begin, just to give you a brief overview of the elements that we're here to talk about, the primary elements are the boardwalk itself and the materials that we're using for the boardwalk and the clearance or the height above the marsh that we're currently using for the boardwalk design. We would like to talk about the riverfront area and how we've designated the degraded versus non-degraded riverfront and how we're applying the Rivers Protection Act. And then we'd also like to talk about the restroom aspects, and we'll get into the details of that a little bit more as we move forward. This picture is from when we conducted our site walk for the borings. It's showing I guess it'd be the eastern, northern end of the project as we're looking towards where the drive-in was. And the pink stake is kind of indicating the location of the boardwalk. And this is the general route that the boardwalk is going to take, with the 3 stars showing the proposed overlooks, which are going to be slightly wider, about 18 inches wider than the 6-foot width of the boardwalk that is currently being designed. So right now, this is showing the typical sections in the north to south side. So it's on either north to south side of the boardwalk, and we're proposing a 6-foot wide boardwalk with a 6-foot clearance above the salt marsh. You look like you have a question.
Yeah, does anybody know the width of the Grays Beach boardwalk?
Yes. I went out and took a look at that, and it's 4 feet wide there inboard of the posts. And we're currently proposing to be at 6.
Oh, well,
for this.
that makes me feel a little more comfortable, yeah. Do you have a separation that you're proposing between the boards on the walk?
Oh, in terms of the space?
Yeah.
Yeah, ADA requires a 1/2 inch or less, American with Disabilities Act, so it's going to be in that range.
Okay.
At this point in time, as we're showing, we're thinking it's all boardwalk and not grading. I know at one point we talked about grading might be an option, and we feel like we can be successful with planks, and it's a more consistent system.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so then while we're talking about that, I think, because we typically will ask applicants with dock and pier projects to go with the now standard recommendations of marine fisheries, where we have a 1.5 to 1 ratio. So I would suggest that would be the better way to go. I realize it's going to be a longer, taller thing, but I think if we're asking everybody in the public to do it, we should certainly expect the same thing from anything from a town project as well. So that would be my comment on that.
Yeah, I wonder if I could when we go back a slide and look at the plan view, and I'll just touch on the approach. So particularly in the north-south runs, so the yellow runs, we were hoping that we could maintain the minimum of 1-to-1 ratio there. So I understand what you're saying. You're asking for greater height. We thought because of the solar orientation that there would be good access to the marsh grass canopy and sunlight coming through in those yellow sections. And they were proposing to transition to a higher elevation for the red section. So there we were looking at a 1 to 1.25, essentially gaining some elevation over the marsh for the red section. And as Laura said, that's also the area that would have, overlooks. So the overlooks would be a little bit wider because there'd be room for people to stand and other people to pass by. And I think we do have a slide later that shows the idea of how to transition from one height to the other. I think the other point I try to make is the terrain of the marsh does vary subtly within like a 1 foot range. So while it's all tidal, our goal would be to establish even elevations for the boardwalk, not a lot of up and down. So in some areas, you would have greater height separation because the terrain would drop down and we'd be maintaining a constant height. And I think in the process of developing the permitting work, we're going to be looking at that more closely, looking at exactly the topography underneath the alignment. But I did want to just highlight this, that we were proposing 2 different heights under this current alignment.
And I will also add to that, as Eric was saying, the boardwalk might be greater than 1-to-1, but we're basing our height on the I guess tallest point of where the boardwalk would be above. So at no point would it be less than that 1-to-1.
So I know you went out to Gray's Beach to confirm the width of the boardwalk as well as the spacing. Did you confirm the height of the boardwalk as well when you were there?
It's a good question. I estimated it at about 4 feet. It varies because there's a little bit of a tidal inlet.
Yeah.
The reason I paused is one of the last times I was there, it was damaged after the nor'easter, and so I couldn't get to where I wanted to go. But we wanted to look at that more closely. It's about 4 feet above the marsh.
Thank you.
And what's the flood elevation here? Anybody know?
BFE's 12, I believe.
13?
I think it varies. So closer to the water, I think it's 13, and then it moves to 12 closer inland.
So, I mean, that's my other concern with this is like, I can see, I would rather the light and shading aspect is one aspect that I'm asking this about. But the other reason is because if we have flood elevation at 13 and you're 6 feet and you're doing only 6 feet above, that's going to give plenty of opportunities where that boardwalk is going to be more prone to more inundation. And if that's the case, then are you going to be coming back, more frequently to fix something or raise something? And I'd rather just see it done once the first time instead of coming back and saying, okay, well, we're coming back to fix it again and again and again. That's just, again, it's just my opinion. But feel free to go ahead with the rest of your presentation.
Sure. So this is showing the one width to 1.25 height. So it's just showing that difference so this would be in the east-west direction. And then this shows some of the transition as we go from the 1:1 to the 1:1.25 ratio. And this shows the transition from the upland in the land subject to coastal storm flowage area to the boardwalk itself. So this would happen over a shrub zone, it's not going to happen over the salt marsh. So so once we hit the salt marsh, we'll be at that 1:1 elevation to width. This is a depiction of the overlooks and kind of how they'll be oriented, and they're located at areas where the boardwalk is transitioning in orientation. And there's also there's a consideration to add some bench seating. It hasn't been fully designed yet, but there are, I think we're saying up to 6 are anticipated, but we're still working through some of the design elements on the benches, which would occur along the straight shots of the boardwalk. So we have also looked at a couple of materials for the railings. One would be to use wooden railings, and then another would be to use a cable railing system. In our presentation that I believe you've read, we did go through kind of we're looking for a little bit of flexibility here. We don't exactly know what's going to be available when this goes into construction and what construction costs are going to be. So leaving some flexibility in exactly what type of material we'd be using is what we're kind of looking for. But we've analyzed the pros and cons of each. I don't know if you want to add to that, Eric.
We had a committee meeting last week, and the committee's interested in maintaining as much flexibility as possible. Some of the systems will cast less shadow, like the cable system or a mesh system. But the plank sort of style, like Gray's Beach, is something they're more familiar with, and it's possibly easier to maintain. So going forward, and it may be a combination of different railing types, we'll get to the solution that we need to use here. But I guess this is a slide that just says because of lots of reasons, we need to stay flexible on the design process for the rail.
Believe so. That's our last slide on the boardwalk discussion. I don't know if anyone else has any input on the boardwalk height to width ratio. And we are proposing extensive. We will be including mitigation in the Riverwalk Park for the impacts to this associated with the project. So just kind of wondering if anyone else wants to weigh in. Yes.
I have a question. Why 6 feet? If Grace Beach is 4, why are you going with 6 feet wide on this one? Is that ADA? Is that a need to be an ADA compliant thing, or is just 6 feet for?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. So a couple things I think factored into the discussion. It's been in the plans from the committee, I think, for 3 or 4 years now that that width was the goal. Okay. Part of the goal is ADA really only requires 3 feet for passage, but it does require areas to turn wheelchairs around on a regular basis. And so creating those adds a little bit of complication to keep repeating these turning areas. And so in some ways it's easier to just pick a width and maintain a constant width. 6 feet allows a little more freer passage in both directions. I think the pandemic also showed a little space is good. I think there's some challenges at Gray's with just people actually having to touch each other when you pass. And this boardwalk's long. It's about 1,600 feet in its total loop. And so there's not really, maybe it could be a one-way system, but it's hard to kind of enforce that. So it's probable you're going to encounter people, in both directions. The overlooks maybe give a little room for passage. And then the 6 feet also allows for people with mobility problems or different generations to walk next to a child or to walk next to an older person that might need assistance. And the ability to have 2 people next to each other and still have someone pass was also part of that consideration. We realize it makes us be a little bit higher, but we think it's a more functional. Yeah, the feeling from the committee was a more functional design that was more inclusive, than some of the other boardwalks that, you might be familiar with.
The other question I have is, you have the 3 overlooks, and then you're proposing the seating areas, which would also bump out just as much as the overlook. So you're talking about that added shaded area. How many seating? I mean,
Yeah, it's a good question. Laura said 6, and that's at the concept level that's what we're talking about. We want to provide places for people to sit if they need to.
I understand that. It wasn't, 18 inches for the 3 overlooks and then nothing for the seating. 'Cause that does add the extra.
That's a good point. We also think that there's a way to do the seating that maybe has less shading through either a mesh or some other type of system. So the overlook really requires a boardwalk system, we think, just
Yeah.
for consistency. The way the seating's done, I think we have a little bit more flexibility. And so I think that could let more light through, because it would be like a park bench or something that might be made out of rods or slats or mesh perhaps. And it might allow more sunlight than a wooden, deck would.
Thank you.
And in the locations where those, the benches would be, they would be where we're at the 1 to 1.25.
On the
So-
north-south.
Right. No, it would be on the east-west,
that would be the
exactly. So we're already higher, so we'd still meet, it would still be 1 to 1 at least, in those bump outs for the benches.
I have 2 questions for you. Has the committee considered utilizing an aluminum grate system for the decking opposed to the wooden? We've had a few examples of that come before us, and I think the reduction in shading is a pretty significant benefit of that. And secondly, do you have any information on the success of those steel support systems in a storm situation?
Okay, so yeah, I'll take the last part of the question first. So I think you're talking about the helical anchors.
Correct.
Yeah. So we're in the process of still evaluating what the piling or the support system will be. That's a helical anchor, which is kind of a screwed in post that then supports it. And typically it's steel, and they can be galvanized and they can be jacketed to protect them against corrosion, but they are still steel in the marine environment. So there are concerns about longevity, and in concurrence with this system, we're also looking at a conventional wood piling system, which you're more familiar with, like a bass. That's what you have, a bass hole. I think with this particular system, it's lighter weight equipment. It's a less of a footprint in the marsh, so sort of a less of a permanent impact. But that's got to be balanced with sort of durability, as you say, and long-term ability for the structure to stay there.
We've had a number of installations over the last 2 years utilizing composite pilings, and certainly a lot of benefits there potentially for this project. Lighter, easier installation.
Yeah.
Just didn't know if it was part of your analysis or not.
That would be something I'd like to maybe talk with you more about composites. We've looked at a hybrid that is a screwed in anchor, a helical anchor, and then a wood post, but I don't know that we've gone to the next level in terms of a
Pearson
composite.
Pilings from Rhode Island has been utilized a number of times on Bass River.
And then relative to the grading, at this point, we're trying to stay with just a standard system, which is the plank system. Were those private docks or public docks that you're speaking
Private.
of? Yeah, so one of the challenges here is the ADA compliance requires a very small opening in the decking. And so the amount of light that would get through that can be challenging, especially when it's performed in a thickness, the grade is so thick that not much light can get. At least that's what we're finding at this point in our investigation. So we're still looking at the plank system, but I'd love to talk to you about those.
Sure.
If we can do that as well.
Thank you.
What did you say was the minimum or the maximum distance between planks?
ADA is really a half an inch. 3/8 is yeah, even a little bit.
Find the aluminum decking like that.
Better, actually. I've seen better.
Yeah, I think so. Anybody else?
Yeah, thank you. I like your planning. I like what it looks like. I know you'll make some adjustments as have possibly been suggested, but I appreciate your effort and the effort of the committee. I think it looks great. Thank you.
Anyone else? You want to move on to Riverfront?
Great. Back to, So, here we're gonna talk about Riverfront and, degraded versus non-degraded and how we're going to apply the definitions and the regulations. So this is an aerial photograph taken from 2021. It shows the locations of the revegetation along the banks of the river. And then as it also depicts the, the larger drive-in area, as you can see where that was located.
Sorry, I might have just messed you up.
Not working anymore.
Yeah, give it a
All
try.
right, let's see. There we go. All right, this is a picture of the site in 1989. It shows a slightly larger footprint of the drive-in, and the areas along the riverfront are actually smaller. So the area of degraded back in 1989 was substantially greater. But we'll get into the calculations and what we're thinking as degraded versus non-degraded in a minute. But I'm going to go through our analysis of the site. So this is a picture of what the interior of the site looks like. The former drive-in area shows that there's really limited vegetation. The soil is extremely compact, and there's areas of debris and concrete and asphalt just scattered throughout this area, with small amounts of sand on top of it and some herbaceous vegetation growing in that sand. It's a picture of the bank of the river here, which shows that there's even some asphalt that's up to the river. These areas, given the extensive salt marsh vegetation on top of this, we're not considering this area degraded, but the area associated with the upweller, we are, and we'll talk about that in a minute. And then this is an area, I think if you can see the picture with the red dot in the upper right corner, showing where this is. There's areas of asphalt and concrete again along the project within the riverfront area. And then finally, this is a typical soil profile when we conducted our test pits out there to look at what we can do for drainage and other considerations out there. We found this was a typical soil profile, lots of mixing of soil types, and little to no topsoil present on the site. So based on that analysis of the site, where the area that's shown in pink is outside of the limit of vegetation that is currently there today. This is the area with little to no topsoil. There's maybe some crabgrass and weeds growing in a small layer of deposited soil on top of really compacted, degraded soil on the site. And then the areas shown in the green are the areas that you could see in the 2021 aerial that we have the vegetation growing into the former degraded area. And then the orangish area is the area of pristine or non-degraded riverfront area that was present even back in 1989. This is a depiction of kind of where we're at with the concept for the design. We're looking at the parking lot shown in the outer riverfront area as a riverfront park. The intent is to get people to drive to and enjoy the river. So that's kind of the reasoning behind the location of the parking lot. We're proposing, or we're looking at the locations of the footpaths along the river. We're still working through the type or the surfaces of those paths, but we're looking at where those can be located to stay outside of your 35-foot no disturbance zone and working within the riverfront area. And also, I'll point out while we're on this slide, there is a potential kayak launch shown off of the cul-de-sac at the end. The idea behind that kayak launch would be similar to what we're proposing for the boardwalk. So like a 1-to-1 over the salt marsh, and then there'd be a gangway, which would be seasonal down to a float. We don't have the bathymetry survey for that area yet to determine where that float would sit during a low tide, but that's something that we're looking at now. And then in terms of some mitigation opportunities for the site, I think you read through these, so I don't want to go through it too much in detail, but looking at removing pavement, improving the inner riverfront area and planting the inner riverfront area where we can, creating pervious pavement and removing invasives. I believe, yeah, so that's our last riverfront slide. So we're open to your input here.
If I may, I have one question for you. This kayak launch area, are you proposing that they walk the kayaks all the way down that ramp? Or is there going to be storage on the resource area for these? Because that looks like an awful long ramp to be carrying a kayak down and then, or plank, and then down the ramp and then off a float. I don't know how that would be feasible unless you're keeping the kayaks in the resource area. If it's going to be, I've done it. It can be done. It's just not very easily
Right.
doable.
Right. I mean, I think it's fair to say we're still looking at how that works. Ideally, we're using the same system that we're using for the boardwalk. So it's going to look the same. It's going to be the wider, the 6 foot width. So there's a little bit more accommodation, going out on the pier itself. But I think there are those challenges you talk about because of the distance. Ideally, there's some type of rack system up where the cul-de-sac is, which is right around the 100 foot, right around the 100 foot line. So there'd probably be some support racks, maybe a small kiosk at the cul-de-sac drop-off area. And that would be where storage would work probably best. And then they'd have to take it, the kayak all
They
the
have
way
to
down.
take it 100 feet out on the board.
Yeah, and the challenges of the ramp, the ramp itself.
I've ridden down a kayak on a ramp. It's not real fun.
So it is a piece we're still continuing to look at. It's been in the plan since 2017. So it's one of those things that we're now getting back into, and we need the bathymetry to really finalize sort of the position, and that will affect the gangway and some of those things, and hopefully,
And the
maybe
navigation-
decrease. Yeah, the navigational
navigation there
component.
too, because it's very narrow in that area.
Yeah, that needs to be assessed as well once we get it dropped in. But the concept anyway is to kind of replicate the boardwalk with that gangway and float at the end.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else? Yeah, Paul?
Yeah, I think it's very important to maintain some sort of kayak access to the water. Shame to have this whole park developed and not be able to get something into the water. Anyway, the other thing I have a question on, maybe I'm just not reading this right. On this page, can you see something up there?
Yep.
What's the square in the left side, middle left?
Sure. So that's part of the goal is to have an event space here that can
Okay.
function, like you've been using it, over the past couple of
Yeah.
years. And so there's sort of an ideal size for an event that's about an acre in size. It's about 200 feet square in terms of sound projection
Yeah.
and managing events. And so all that represents the diagonal X box. It represents where the stage might go.
I see.
And then the footprint of the event space itself were for maybe the audience primarily. And then you'd have surrounding activities and other parts of the event. And this is positioned based on a sound study that was done and commissioned and sort of
Yeah.
positioned in a way to have the least amount of impacts to the neighborhoods in terms of the orientation of the speakers on the stage.
Yeah.
And you can see it does create a little bit of a pinch towards what we're trying to do as far as access and parking. So we wanted to represent the other elements that go into the design because we're trying to balance working along the edge of the river and the best location for the event space and how that should work and be flexible to host lots of different types of events.
Yeah, that'd be great. Along those lines, how many parking spaces do you have in your plans there?
There's I think between 90 and 100. We've played around with the configuration a little bit. And so those are permanent spaces along that entrance drive coming in. And you can see there's a group of we're calling them artist shanties up there in sort of the northeast
I see.
corner.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's probably that first group of parking is associated with that use, maybe some of that second. The middle is probably associated with more passive recreation. And then the last group to the south is probably associated with the water access, the kayak and canoe and maybe paddleboard. And then certainly people that are headed out to the boardwalk. And part of the goal here is to also have sort of a perimeter walking system for the field, in the inland areas so that you can make a loop and then go out to the boardwalks and then come back out into the park itself.
Looks good, thank you.
Great.
Maybe I missed it. What's the majority of the rest of the field going to be? Are you just,
It's flexible. It's going to be grassed. We've been working a little bit with fire and safety just in terms of their access requirements. There's kind of a lightly shaded section to the west, and the thought is that would be where the parking would be on site, like overflow parking for an event. So that would be really in that upland area that's lighter shaded beyond the event space.
all right. On to bathrooms.
All right, on to bathrooms.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, can I just make
Oh,
a
yeah,
comment?
sorry.
I just wanted to, one of the things that had come up during the design meetings was this really trying to have a pathway that gave people a view of the water as part of the Riverwalk Park, and with the vegetation being relatively high, they were trying to see if to get as close as possible to the river while still obviously respecting the 35-foot setback and the requirements of the riverfront area regulations. So I just wanted to kind of really bring attention to the idea of putting some kind of pathway closer to the water, and how that does, how people feel about that in terms of the 35-foot setback, the width, the materials, that kind of thing, where, if you have any feedback on that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I assume it's going to be some sort of a hard pack in construction. Is that what you're thinking about? that
Process
way?
properly.
Yeah, we're having some challenges with the water table out there being higher than anticipated. So a hard pack, like a stabilized earth path,
Right.
might be the solution rather than trying to do a pervious path. Laura pointed out two concerns with sediment, especially in that environment, might deplete the functionality of a pervious system. So
I don't think you're going to get that to work.
yeah. So as you suggest, like a stabilized earth, crusher dust or something like that might be the treatment.
I get the concept. And you said this is still, it's in the 35-foot buffer, right? It's not going into resource area. It's just, you're still talking about buffer.
Well, we're within riverfront and floodplain, but yes, yeah.
Yeah. I see the desire for it. I don't think it needs to be 6 feet, but
6 feet wide, do you mean?
6 feet wide, yeah. I think you could probably do that, achieve the same flow and do it with the 4 feet, but that would be my preference.
We've also thought about, where the location of the path would be best suited, and, routing it maybe through areas where there is a large amount of invasive species. So we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and we can remove invasive species and then plant natives in that 100-foot inner riparian area to mitigate for that as well. And so it would be, putting the path there, but we'll also be getting rid of invasives, mostly in that location. It's autumn olive.
Okay. In that respect, as the path goes through, it's going to intersect with the kayak launching area.
Further over than that,
Hmm?
like along this section.
There's a details.
Oh, I'm sorry. I see. Okay.
This shows it a little closer on this slide here. Yeah.
Thank you. Never mind. My mistake. Okay. Anything else? Kelly? Anyone? All right.
All right, so restrooms. So the restroom is shown on near the cul-de-sac, kind of at the intersection of the 3 aspects of the park. So it's near the parking and near the kayak launch. It's near the event space, and it's also near the entrance to the path to the woods out to the boardwalk. So it's centrally located, and that's why we're proposing it in the location where we're showing it right now. Shown as it's within the outer riverfront area, so between the 100 and 200. One of the considerations is that the restroom is within the floodplain, and currently there is no sewer to the site, and because of the high groundwater, septic is also not available. So we're looking at using a temporary tight tank, so we'd only be using that and until the sewer is installed. We can answer any questions on that. And then there's a coating on, I think you can speak to this a little bit better, Eric, but the outer the outer area of the restroom will be protected in the floodplain so that they won't get flooded during larger rain events.
Right, that's a good way of describing it. You can see here what we're proposing. The line on the bottom, the dash lines, are sort of what the existing grade is. And one other reason the restroom is being positioned here, as we're thinking about it now, is it's one of the higher parts of the site, so it allows us to elevate it by placing some fill there and getting it a little more out of the floodplain. And then, as Laura said, it's probably going to be a concrete masonry unit building, which can be, the lower level can be flood proofed with stop logs and weirs to protect it from getting inundated. So that's the concept we're pursuing now. And then, yeah, and as this shows, then the tight tank would be next to it. And then in the future, that tank would receive a pump station and would be able to pump out to the sewer service when it comes in on 28.
Anything?
A lot of fill.
That's a lot of pumping that's going to happen.
Yeah. long
Concerts
one.
and things. Okay, we're good.
All right, anybody else? We good? All set?
Thank you for the update.
You have a
Thank
better
you for your
idea of
time.
what we're
Very
looking-
appreciative of it.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, that's fine. Thank you.
All right, next order of business, a request for determination of applicability for John and Catherine McNamara, 7 Kelp Lane, Yarmouth, proposed expansion of an existing 5-foot by 20-foot float within land under the ocean and land containing shellfish. Hello, and if you would just state your name for the record and then briefly describe the project, and then what we'll do is we'll turn it over to the commissioners if they ask if they have any questions for you, and we'll go from there.
My name is John McNamara, and I and my wife Catherine own the property at 7 Kelp Lane, and we're asking the commission for a request for determination of applicability for expanding our 5 by 20 float in front of the home to 2 floats as described in the drawings.
Okay, so it's increasing by 100 square foot, right? And so it's
Basically,
just
yes.
within the, just a smidge outside the 200 square foot limit. Questions from the commission?
Start with Ellie.
Ellie?
Is this existing now or is it proposed?
The floats are existing. It's what was
Existing,
there
yeah.
when I bought the house 7 or 8 years ago.
Okay. Is your chapter 91 allow those 2 floats?
It does not, no. It allows a 5 by 20 float.
A 5 by 20. What's the depth of the water there? Do you know?
4 feet, about 4
4
feet.
Right, that is I know our regulation is 200 square feet, but that is a very narrow area and it does create a lot of shading. That's really my only concern is that it's very narrow in those little fingers that they have there, so. Just my thought. That's all I
Okay,
have.
thank you. Okay.
I was just wondering, you're trying to accommodate your boat on these,
We tie the boat up there, correct.
and how long's your boat? Just,
I have, one is 30 feet, one is 18 feet, so they
Oh,
protrude
I see.
beyond, actually.
2 of boats, okay. I kind of agree with the fact that we're out there, that those floats just continue the whole length of that that area, allowing no all shading through that area. So it's just kind of difficult to, that would be good for the plants. And the floats on the other side, your neighbors' floats, are they as long also?
They've been, well, in these drawings have been removed. There were 4 floats that connected all of the property.
Yeah,
The 2 of the floats have been removed that were common on either side of the property line.
okay. Just seems to me to be
Was there.
a lot of floats in this area. So just the whole section there is just full of the floats with no sunlight getting into there. But if you have two boats, I can see why you're trying to,
In the kids have kayaks and paddle boards that they use on the river too, that
Yeah.
they use the dock area to launch those.
okay, I have nothing else to say.
Paul?
Yeah, just to help me to understand. So there's an existing 5-foot by 20-foot float,
That existed in 1979, presumably.
one float or two floats?
The original permitted Chapter 91 license was for a single 5 by 20 float.
Okay, so, but right now, I didn't get out there, I'm sorry to say, but there's one float or there's two?
There are
5 by-
two floats.
Two.
Well, there's not, it's been removed
Oh, it's very
just
removed, okay.
recently, but the two floats are as depicted on the drawing, located on the drawing, exactly that size.
Yeah. So, unless I'm missing something, so we allow 200 square feet, right? And so if you had two 5 by 20s, you'd have the 200 square feet.
Correct.
So why not go with the 5 by 20? Why do you need to go to 6 by 19.38?
They're existing. There's two existing floats that are exactly that size.
Those are in there now.
They're not physically there now, they're in the driveway of the home, but they were there up until several weeks ago, yes. And they were existing when we bought the home
Okay.
7 years ago.
So maybe I'm being really dense here, but so you want to take those 6 by 19s and put them in the water to replace the 5 by 20s?
Correct. We were asking to put these two floats back in the water
Yeah.
as our permanent floats.
Yeah, okay, I understand.
Yes.
It's just that the sizes are almost the same in a way. You know, one is, the 6 foot is a little bit wider, a foot wider.
It
So I
was
just
done,
wondered,
I assume it was done to keep under the 200 square feet
That's right.
by the former owner. They were probably existing floats and they were
yeah,
either built or modified to be 200 square feet,
yeah.
knowing that I believe is the what's allowed.
But in that regard, and I'm sorry if I'm just not getting it, but the 5 by 20s are in the water right now.
They are not.
They're out
There
of
is
the
no
water,
5 by
but you're
20.
waiting with the 6 by 19s in the driveway to put them in. Right?
Correct.
Okay.
We're asking to put these two floats in the spring.
I guess is it hard? It probably is to reduce the size of the 6 by 19 to 5 by 19.
You'd have to destroy, just completely rebuild them.
You'd have to
They
rebuild the
wouldn't-
whole thing.
The styrofoam, everything.
Yeah.
You need new floats. If you were going to do that, they're God knows how old now anyway.
I see.
You'd have to rebuild them.
Okay, thank you, and thank you for being patient with my
Well,
question.
my pleasure, no problem.
Tom?
No, Paul straightened it out for me as well. Thank you.
Mr. Bishop?
This commission has been consistent, asking applicants to adhere to the regulations limiting to floats to 200 feet. And that's where I am on this.
Anything else? We're good? Kelly, anything?
So just for further clarification, it was permitted by the commission at a 1 5 by 20 float, and that was removed, sounds like a long time ago, and replaced with the two floats that are in the driveway at the moment. So those two floats that are this, the applicant's size that they're proposing is what has been there for a while. Just to clarify on that. Yeah, so they are just slightly over the 200 square foot. Most of the properties in this area have only been permitted for the one smaller float. And I'm assuming that is because none of them meet the distance requirement of the 80 feet from the neighboring docks. So that's why the smaller floats were probably permitted in this location. So it does add a certain amount of congestion with extra boats and extra shading from the floats by having additional floats here. This is the previous as-built that showed what was there until recently when the extra floats were removed. So the property to the left at, I think it's 11 Kelp Lane, right?
Correct.
They were permitted for two floats, so they were at the 200 square foot. That was approved by the commission. I'm not sure why that was. Maybe it was because they're on the Parkers River side, so there's a little more space there. So I think I looked at all of the permit sizes for all the other properties in that stretch, and they were all at 6 by 25, 6 by 22, 6 by 24, one float. And that is all I have.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I would tend to agree that like if it was permitted for 100, I think it's awfully congested in there. So I would be inclined to keep it at the 100, but
Ed,
that's just me. I get,
just another thought. If you look at the other floats in the area, there's one 6 by 25 and the dimensions that Kelly mentioned. I mean, you have 150 square feet, 132 square feet, 144 square feet. And then we're asked to make a judgment, a call on 230 feet.
Additional.
That's disproportionate.
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else in the commission? Anybody in the audience have any comments or questions on this project?
Can I make one suggestion?
Yes, you may.
That given that some of the other properties have the, like up to 6 by 25, I don't know whether that's something of an in-between size that's consistent with the other properties would be an appropriate suggestion or alternative.
It is. This is an RDA though.
It is, that's right.
So, I mean, I can't ask him that we can't continue it.
Can we ask the applicant to revise the application or an approval this evening, or, because we can't continue it without,
We can't continue it. We either have to give a negative determination and let it go as proposed, or positive determination and require a notice of intent. I don't think we need that either, but
revise the application within the hearing, or?
well, I mean, if they wanted to make a smaller set of floats, and I guess they could arrange it. Well, I'm asking you, can they do that right here and now? You know, providing a new plan, essentially.
It would have to just be a conditional approval, a conditional negative determination, but it would have to be time limited.
But we'd have to receive it. So where are we at? When did we receive this? 22nd of November. How's our,
Yeah, so we're pretty close.
it would have to be changed by tomorrow, right? Because you still need to get time to get out then, right? Second.
Confused.
Three.
What,
So it sounds like the commission are not prepared to approve the proposed float size. So if they vote against it, it means you would have to file a notice of intent, effectively is what the decision is for an RDA determination. So I was suggesting an alternative of bringing it into line with the other permitted floats in that area at about 6 by 25 dimensions for one float or total float area. But we can't continue an RDA hearing because it procedurally could put us outside the 21-day response time that we have for your application. So we're just trying to work
Because
through
we're
that.
out right now.
Hmm?
We received it on. Am I? If you would hold on for just a minute, it's just a
No, I'd rather
procedural
try and
thing.
Yeah, so
resolve
that
it.
means we were- But I think there was a,
21 days right now.
okay, so we have to do, well, there was a waiver for the 21 days, but it's for the hearing.
We signed a waiver.
Yeah, but for 21 days to the hearing. I mean, we can get a waiver from the applicant,
So how much time
from
do
the
you-
applicant now to the 21 days to issue. That's,
Okay, do you have to get a sign statement for that?
um,
Or
I guess it can be a part of the minutes, or I can go and grab one to.
Okay, so, and what are we looking at in terms of size then? Have we,
I'm confused. If I can just ask a question in general, are 5 by 20 floats typically allowed? I understand you're allowed up to 200 square feet.
you allow 200 square feet, I think,
Not
Is that the
area.
issue? That's because it's over by.
but I think the commission was
one or
looking for
two
something a
square
little
feet?
smaller than that, since you were only permitted for, what was it, 100 square feet? And now you're asking for a little bit more than 200 feet. So I think they're looking for something smaller than the 200, but we're willing to give you a little bit more that in relation to what the other docks are. So we're looking right around 130, 140 square feet. Does that sound reasonable to people?
It does.
So we'd be looking for a reduction to 130 square feet or so. And if that's not something you want to entertain, then, our conversation, for the last 5 minutes has been kind of moot, but
I'm confused.
but we can't continue this, okay? So
Yeah.
we can't, there's no way we can continue it. We can ask you for a waiver, to essentially agree to a waiver where we can get a different, you would have to agree to a smaller float size, and you'd have to do that tonight. And you would have to agree to the waiver. And let's see, where else? And then you would have to get a plan in a relatively short period of time to show that new, or that reflects that new float size.
Could we just modify them to be the 200 square feet? It means taking an
The
inch and a
commission's
half
not going
off
to,
each
that's what I'm
float.
saying, the commission's not entertaining 200 square feet.
Oh, I thought that was allowed. It's not allowed.
That's within the regulation. It's no more than 200 square feet. But the commission is also feeling that because of the confined area of that particular area, that 200 feet would be too much, too significantly more than what everything else is for that area. So we're saying we would approve a slightly larger float than what you were permitted for. But I don't think we're looking at 200 square feet. I'm not getting the feeling that the board would approve 200 square feet.
Can I ask the question, please?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So next door at 11, they have the two floats, right? And it says in Kelly's notes that that was permitted 2 5x20s. And it said the property is the seaward most property on Kelp Lane. So is that why that was permitted? There was more room over there in that particular location?
I'm assuming, I don't know.
remember.
I don't know for sure.
I can't remember it 100%, but I think that was along the conversation.
Was like a long time ago?
Because one of those floats was supposed to be on the other side. There was one on each side, and it's at the other. And
So that the existence of that doesn't in any way influence this application? In other words.
No, again, we remember we take each one and.
I know, but the factors that were presented in terms of okaying those permits are not applicable in this particular instance?
Well, I think somebody else would then say the rest of the areas, the permits were issued for floats that were significantly smaller than 200 square feet. And so if that's the case, then shouldn't you be taking that into consideration as well?
I'm just asking the question,
Yeah, that's what I'm
so they
providing
do,
you.
yeah, I mean, the commission does take into consideration the conditions in the general area because you're looking at cumulative impact. So we'll need to consider what other docks are in that
Yeah,
location.
so the conditions in the general area are restricting the size of these floats below 200 square feet. So those restrictions created by those conditions apply in this particular application. And for some reason didn't apply in the next door neighbor whenever that was.
Yeah,
permitted.
so my only assumption is that it's because it was
Yeah.
closer to Parker's River that it was considered to have
It could
more.
also have been
impact.
put in
Next to it.
before this one was in, because you have the 75-foot setback too.
Yeah, I think it was also, it was one of the first ones that was
Oh,
done on that, in those fingers, so.
Okay, well, thank you for that information.
Okay. Okay, so I mean, what it comes down to is like, is that something that you want to entertain, a smaller set of floats? Like in 130 square foot range? Or, I mean, if you don't want to entertain that, then we can vote on the proposal as it is. And you take your chances that way.
Uh, I don't know. I thought I was allowed, I wasn't aware of that. I wasn't allowed to have 200 square feet. I thought that was a right, I suppose, for lack of a
No,
better
it's not a right.
description. I'm not an
That's a
attorney.
maximum. Yeah, that's viewed as a maximum.
And it wouldn't preclude me from coming back at a later date and asking for additional.
I mean, it wouldn't preclude you from doing that. I mean, I don't know if I'd necessarily recommend it, but
I would prefer to have the 200 square feet, even if I reduce those by an inch. I think it's an inch or an inch and a half would make those exactly 200 square feet. I'd prefer to have 200 square
need to
feet.
make
I
the
don't know if that,
determination.
okay, so you want to go ahead with what you're proposing?
can I poll the board or do I have to have, can I poll the
We
board?
don't
for an
typically do a
opinion?
straw vote, but I think I don't usually allow for a straw vote, because that's just like, it either is, I mean, this is what you want us to vote on, this is what we'll vote on. And I think it was fairly clear as to what most of the board was saying, so.
So you're allowing me how many square feet?
We would allow you 130 square feet, is that
Yeah,
what the board is saying?
The 22 by 6?
Pardon?
yeah, I think it's 22 by 6.
22 by 6 is 132.
Okay,
132, is that what you said?
22 by 6.
132.
Okay, I guess I have no choice. Okay.
Well, I mean, you do have, that's what I'm saying, you do have a choice. I'm just saying that that's what we're at, that's what we're trying to determine right now. So you're going to go ahead with the 132?
Yes.
Okay, so with the motion would be a -2 with receipt of a revised plan by, do you need a date certain for that?
Yes. And yeah, so I can check, but the application wasn't complete on the date that it was stamped. So the date of actual,
Oh, okay, so that makes,
Yeah.
that makes
I
a
was trying to
difference.
think why that was the case. So
I
I
was
can,
wondering what was going on with that.
so I think we were complete on the 29th.
Oh, that makes a big difference.
So that would put us at Monday.
You have to have it by Monday, right? So to issue by 21, by Tuesday, the following Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we would have to receive the plan, the updated plan by December 20th,
Okay.
okay? And so that way, we don't have to worry about a waiver then either. So that makes it more convenient that way as
And
well.
so what happens if we don't receive it by then?
If we don't receive it, then
It's a,
it would, go-
do you make it a positive determination? at
it would
that
have to be a positive determination.
point? So the vote would have to reflect that. The motion would have to
All right,
reflect
so the
that.
motion is for a -2 pending the receipt of an updated revised plan showing the floats maximum of 132 square feet. And it has to be received by December 20th. If the revised plan isn't received by December 20th, the motion would become a positive one or positive 5.
You got that?
Positive determination requiring in order of condition, and I can confirm
Okay.
which one it is.
All right, so you clear on that?
I won't say
Paul,
so.
you're looking,
Oh, no, it's okay.
you're good? Pat, you understand?
Yep.
Rick, Tom,
Yes.
everybody good?
Yep.
Okay. All right, so would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. Is there a second?
Second, Ellie?
Thank you, Ellie. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 1. All right, so you understand what's going, so the negative determination is actually a good thing for you. It's saying, we're saying that if you, as long as you give us the revised plan by December 20th, showing that, or reflecting that change in float size, we will be able to issue the negative determination. You'll be able to go ahead and keep create those two floats for the 132 square feet. If we don't receive it by the close of business on the 20th, then it becomes a positive determination. If you want to have any kind of floats at all above what you were permitted for originally, you would then have to file a notice of intent. Okay.
I voted against it.
You can still sign it.
Should I still sign it? Okay. That's
Either
all.
way, doesn't matter.
Didn't see that. Thank you, Bill.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Catch.
The new one. Okay, next order of business is another request for determination of applicability for Edward Stafford, 8 Deerfield Road, Yarmouth. Proposed construction of a 20 by 26 foot detached garage and replacement of existing driveway within land subject to coastal storm flowage. Good afternoon.
How you doing? It's Stafford. And I propose to do a 20 by 26 detached garage. It's in a flood zone, so that's why we're here. There's no wetlands or anything like that. I don't know if you guys went out there. It's a fairly flat lot. And from the street to the, where the structure's going to be, it's probably about like a 6-inch grade. And we're going to put 2 dry wells in to catch any water runoff from the garage.
Okay, very good.
That's about it. And we're removing there's an asphalt driveway right now where the existing garage is. And we're going to remove that, and that'll be planted with grass, and it'll be a stone driveway proposed with cobblestone.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Questions from the commission? Rick,
All set, thank you.
Tom,
All set, thanks.
Paul,
No questions right now.
All set.
Ellie, good. Kelly,
I have nothing.
anybody in the audience have any questions, concerns, comments with this proposal? If not, may I have a motion for a -2?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second, Tom.
Thanks, Tom. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Great, thank you.
There you go. I bet you
Have a
were
good
worried, weren't you?
He should have been.
Hey, that was painful, right?
All right, next order of business is a continued notice of intent, continued from November 4th, 2021, for SE 83-2306. Jeffrey and Beth Fanara, trustees for 116 Mayflower Terrace, Yarmouth, proposed elevated walkway with fixed landing within land containing shellfish, land under salt ponds, land containing salt marshes, and land subject to coastal storm flowage. And we have a request from Mark Burgess for asking for a continuance to January 6th, 2022. Do I have a motion to continue to that date?
So moved.
There's a second.
Second.
Thank you, Paul. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously. I just pass it down. You don't have to sign it.
You're not signed.
Right. The next order of business is a new notice of intent for John Griffin and Ann Zaldistani, 1167 Great Island Road, Yarmouth. Proposed construction of a single-family dwelling with associated appurtenances and landscaping within the buffer zone to a coastal bank and salt marsh.
Good evening. For the record, my name's Laura Schofield. I'm from Schofield Brothers, and I'm here with Bernice Waller from Bernice Waller Landscaping.
Could you speak into the microphone, please?
Yes, it's a little tough with the masks on, isn't it?
Just pull it a little closer to you. That's all.
Okay.
Got it. So Bernice and I are here to represent the homeowners, John Griffin and Ann Zaldestani. The project is the construction of a single-family dwelling at their 1167 Great Island Road property. This is a 1.9 acre vacant lot right now. And I don't know if you recall, but about it was a year ago, we were here before the commission with an abbreviated notice of resource area delineation to identify, locate, and have the wetland lines approved on this property prior to developing the plans for the new house. So just to refresh everyone's memory, the resource areas here are a salt marsh. Then we have land subject to coastal storm flowage moving inland. And we also have the top of a coastal bank associated with the salt marsh. And the 100-foot buffer zone to the top of coastal bank extends into the upland on the property. So the project has been designed so that it's completely outside of the 100-foot buffer zone to the salt marsh. The project has been designed to be completely outside of land subject to coastal storm flowage. The project is within the 100-foot buffer zone to the top of the coastal bank, which is why we're here tonight. And this is a large house on a large property, so there's a lot going on in the upland. So just a couple notes about the upland. Most of the structure and the accessory buildings fall in the upland. The septic system is entirely in the upland outside of the 100-foot buffer. And most of the driveway and parking areas have been designed outside of the 100-foot buffer to the top of coastal bank. So moving towards the resource areas, I'm going to start with what is inside the buffer zone. And first, we have 345 square feet of the structure is located inside the buffer zone. The closest the proposed structure is to the top of coastal bank is a distance of 78 feet to the top of the coastal bank. Within the buffer zone, there's 6,500 square feet of disturbance. And as I mentioned, 345 square feet of that is going to be structure. Approximately 300 square feet of that disturbance is a small portion of the driveway. The driveway is pervious, and the driveway has been provided with drainage as well. That's shown on the grading plan. There are some stone steps and patio areas adjacent to the house, some of which fall within the 100-foot buffer. Obviously, some of the grading associated with the house falls within the buffer. All of the roof runoff for the structure is proposed to go into dry wells to contain the roof runoff. Some of those structures fall within the buffer zone and some fall outside of it, but all the roof runoff is going into dry wells. We have provided a limit of work and erosion control barrier that's shown on the plan. This is a hay bale silt fence erosion control barrier. At the closest to the top of the coastal bank, there's a 55-foot separation between the limit of work and the top of the coastal bank. And it you can see where it kind of comes to a point where that part of the structure is in the buffer zone, and then the erosion control kind of angles towards the property lines, and the undisturbed buffer gets wider as you move towards the property lines. So of the 6,500 square feet of disturbance in the buffer zone that I mentioned, upon construction and final grading, 3,800 square feet of that temporary disturbed areas will be replanted with native species. And it is the plan of the property owners to come back to the commission in a few months. They'd like to develop a plan with the folks from Wilkinson Ecologic Design Company to develop a robust, diverse buffer zone in between where, you know, the yard area ends surrounding the house and as it heads in towards the wetlands. So I think that's it, and we're happy to answer any questions that the commission might have.
Okay, all right, thank you. If you don't mind, I'm going to start off with a couple of minor things. One thing on your, on the regular engineering plan, by Schofield Brothers, the only thing this is not a big deal, but I would like to see a distance from the closest point of the construction, house construction, to the coastal bank.
From the limit of work or from the structure?
From the structure.
Okay, we can add that.
All right. This one. Well, I'll start with the. In terms of the trees that you're talking about cutting down, I would ask that you don't cut any. The only trees that you should be cutting down at this point would be for construction purposes. At this point, you're going to be coming back in a relatively short period of time, probably before the project even gets rolling, to develop your view corridors and landscape buffer landscaping. So I would rather see something that handles those trees, the trees that are getting cut as part of the view corridor under that original or that new notice of intent.
So just to clarify, there were 5 trees outside of the limit of work that we had proposed to be taken down now. And Bernice had actually brought some additional information on those trees. Those are the trees that you're referring to.
Yeah, so yeah, are you talking about the outside the limit of work or outside the 100-foot?
Outside the limit of work.
Within the 100-foot though, right?
Yes.
Okay, so.
Probably those two. The red circle with the X in it is, I'm assuming, what you're,
Yeah, that's a tree removal there.
those are the ones you're proposing to cut down?
Yes, those are the ones that need to be cut down. The majority of the trees that are within the limit of work.
Is this the one that works?
It looks like
that's
4
just
trees.
inside the 50 or just outside the 50.
Yeah, outside the 50.
Okay.
There are the 5 trees that are outside of the 50-foot buffer and in between the limit of work. We've proposed to remove. There's one pine that has a rotted base. There's one pine that doesn't have a canopy. And 3 of those oaks were being removed to allow for more light into the understory and to just allow the trees adjacent to them to be able to mature. With that said, we are looking, we will be bringing a project forward with Wilkinson, and we can address those within that particular package.
Yeah, I think you should, anything like that. I mean, the trees that are diseased, I understand that. Again, I would put all of those into your new filing and not include them as part of this file.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I'm good on that one. I got that one. I'm trying to read my notes here now. Oh, so there seemed to be a fair amount on the site. There were some notes about some relatively unvegetated or undervegetated areas. We should leave, so we'd appreciate that you leave those go to naturalize the parts that are within the 100-foot. again, depending on what's going on with your new filing as well. But under this, I would say don't do anything in the understory other than the planting that you have proposed for this. Okay, does that make sense?
Yeah.
I do have some concerns with the use of non-natives. So anything within the 100-foot, we do require native plantings only. So there were some in the large leaf woodland mix. I think most, if not all, of those are non-native species. So maybe
Yes.
just come up with a different list.
Yeah, we did carry some non-natives around the foundation, in the foundation planting, and we used a primarily, we used an all native buffer for the outlying areas. But we're happy to adjust the foundation planting for it to be native as well.
Yeah, anything, typically anything within the 100-foot, we always ask for natives all the way around, so.
Guest house or something?
I think I've got everything there.
Yeah.
Oh, the only other thing, it doesn't look as though you have any lawns scheduled for within the 100-foot, right?
We do not, the project does not strive to have any
Yeah,
lawn.
I applaud you on that, number one, and I would
Thank you.
like to make sure that we keep no lawn in the 100-foot, then it's a big enough site to do that, so. All right, that's all I have. Anybody else on the question?
Well, I have a question, of course. It looks like you're putting a lot of fill in here to level it out. Why not just shift the whole thing up outside the 100? I mean, right now it looks like it's only like 30 feet inside the 100. If you shift it all up onto the upland, then you wouldn't have to do so much grading and you wouldn't be in the 100.
There is, the site does slope pretty consistently. And so wherever, the challenge is placing a level building on a slope site, you're going to end up with cutting and filling in certain areas. When we were looking at the overall siting of the property itself, there were constraints that we had to come into play with the siting of the well. And the priority to keep the septic outside of the 100-foot buffer. That was some of the reasonings for where the house gets positioned in order to fit the majority of everything outside of the 100-foot buffer.
Well, it looks like you have quite a lot of room over to the west side that's upland, more upland than where you have this placed.
The west side is the area that does begin to slope up more consistently and stronger in that particular corner.
So you would be higher and you wouldn't have to put that much fill in this. It's just my point, you'd be outside the 100.
The septic,
Just my,
sorry, I didn't mean to jump in there. The
you
septic,
don't have to worry about it.
Outbuilding.
the septic system ends up
That's a pool.
being where it is to maintain the setback to the well. And so the site was laid out so that the septic system could be in between the well and the wetland resource areas and stay outside of that 100 feet. And then because we're setting aside that area for the septic system, we kind of overlaid the driveway in the same spot so that you wouldn't require an additional expansion of the footprint of development to try and accommodate the driveway and the septic system.
Pavers, also.
Okay, anybody else? Pat, Paul?
Yeah, quite a project. I just have, do you know what
They're within
what
100,
the,
so I just need to ask that question.
it's like, the size of this lot is 1.8 acres or something like that?
1.9 acres.
Yeah, okay, what's the percentage that the building takes of that 1.9, do you know?
We have the.
I
100
don't know
here.
what the percentage of the building is.
Okay,
It's within the
and
100.
there's a lot of different parts to this, which is really interesting. I see a barn You're not going to keep
Shows
our
it.
horses in there, right? What's,
No.
it's going to be dwelling?
I think it's gonna house, there is some living space in there, but it's also partly the garage and
I see.
storage
Okay.
space
All
for
right.
Sure if it's
bikes
breeding.
and kayaks and stuff.
And just for the record, I also would be interested in saving as many of the trees on the property as possible. I know that there are some that probably need to be taken down, but we need all the trees we can get, so.
I will say that the project does strive to maintain the majority of the trees on the project on site. The clients like the privacy that the trees are providing.
Sure. Okay, thank you very much.
I'm set.
A couple of things. I echo what Chairman Hoop said about utilizing native plantings whenever possible. It's been a guideline of ours for quite some time. I can't identify this structure or whatever it is. It's underneath the heading of large leaf woodland mix. Then there is some sort of, I'm guessing, hardscape possibly, or terracing. I just can't identify what it is.
This here?
No, to the left of
This
that.
area?
Left of there.
More left, more right. Oh, it's right up, right there.
These steps.
That's within the 100-foot.
Yes, there are some steps that are coming down from a terrace that go into that lower bowl area.
What are they made of?
Granite or stone, yeah.
So then non-pervious. All right, that's interesting. Another curiosity to your plan, which I was going to compliment you on, but then I tried to understand the scale, and in all my years in the commission, I have not seen a 1/16 to 1 foot scale. It's not consistent with any of the engineering scaling. So it's very hard for me to understand some of the distances. That makes
Okay.
sense. It's just not a standard thing. So just a point of information for maybe some plans you do in the future. It makes it very difficult.
Okay.
That's what I have. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Kelly?
The only additional thing I have is that we did receive the DEP file number for the project, which is SE 83-2311. What else has been covered? 311.
All right. Anybody in the audience have any comments, questions, or concerns with this project? Jenny? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even ask about that. Any further discussion on the commission? Okay, if not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the project with special conditions for SE 83-2311?
So move, Paul.
Okay, is there a second?
Okay. Second.
Thank you, Rick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Just to clarify, there was just a couple of plan changes, right? So we were going to have
Right.
the
I'm
change
sorry,
in
with
the landscaping plan with the natives, and you wanted the distance to the structure at the top, from the top of bank.
Right,
I
I'm
think
sorry.
that was everything, right?
Yeah, so again,
Shouldn't have-
we'll modify the motion to include those special
Yes.
regulations as well. Is that okay?
Please.
Paul? Made the Paul?
Paul.
Oh, I'm
Is
sorry.
that okay?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, very good. Great, you're all set?
Thank you.
Thank you. Looking
Yeah.
forward to Wilkinson's landscape work as well. Commissioners signed 2 sheets. Right, next order of business, another notice of intent for Valentina Karha, is it? I'm sorry if I may mispronounce that. For 52 Wilson Road, Yarmouth, the proposed raise and replacement of a single-family dwelling within buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetlands and within land subject to coastal storm flowage.
A big Irishman.
It'll get there either way.
Hello,
Thank
Valentina.
you, Karen.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Kieran Healy. I'm a land surveyor with the BSC Group, representing the owners of the property at number 52 Wilson Road. What we're looking to do here is to do a raise and replace on an existing structure. The resource areas are wetlands to the rear, and the entire site falls within a flood zone. The building is elevated to comply with the current flood zone regulations. We are also proposing a new Title V septic system, and we are proposing a driveway up to an elevated garage at the front of the building. We're also providing dry wells at the side to collect any runoff from either downspouts, and a trench drain at the roadway to pick up any water that might come down the driveway. We have a shed at the back of the property. A portion of it is within the 35 to 50-foot buffer, but the majority is outside. We're proposing a silt fence line around the property, and other than that, it's pretty straightforward. Raise and replace of a house to comply with the new flood zone regulations.
All right, thank you, Karen. Questions from the commission?
No.
Tom?
No, thank you.
Paul?
No, thank you.
All right.
So went out to the site, there was a lot of landscape debris in the back of the property that seemed to have been used as a dump there, and
Yes, that's
the tree that is over.
I'll make sure that the owner is aware that anything back there, the debris should be removed.
That's it. Nothing, thank you.
All right, Kelly?
So we did receive a file number SE832310. So there is significant fill proposed. We do have dry wells and a trench drain to capture the runoff from the driveway and the structure. But of course, the question always arises, like, has there been consideration of any runoff impacts to the neighboring properties, given the fill is pretty close to the property lines? I understand that would just be runoff from the, I assume, what are going to be lawn surfaces around the structure?
Correct, yeah. It has been considered. The right-hand side is pretty low all the way along. You'll notice that with the elevated wall for the septic system, it becomes pretty much a flat area, so we don't expect any runoff around the septic, which is pretty much the entire front of the building on the right-hand side. And then we've downspouts, so as we mentioned, for the going into those dry wells on the east and west side. There is some grading on the left side, but we have maintained 5 feet off of the property line. And on the right-hand side, my boss lives next on the right-hand side, so I better not have any water running onto his property.
It seemed like there was a slightly higher elevation on that
He
property
is slightly
on that
higher, yes.
side.
Yeah.
Okay. And then just reiterating Commissioner Mulhern's comment, there is a lot of landscaping debris out the back. There's a pile of brush, but also it looks like years worth of leaves that have been built up on the edge of the wetland. So I'm not sure at this point that it's worth removing that debris, because it's been there obviously a long time, but the pile of shrub vegetation that's been dumped there should be removed. The tree that's come down in the back there, do you know what the plans are for that? That's being removed. It's a pretty large tree that takes up a lot of that back buffer.
I would presume it is to be removed. I haven't been there since that. I
assume it came down in the storm we had, but it's pretty large and impactful. I think I have a photo.
This is at the back of the.
Yeah, it's in this area in here.
I know my clients only recently purchased the property, so the debris that's back there is something that they will plan on taking out.
Let me just zoom out a little bit. That's fairly large in terms of the space that it's taking up there. I guess it could be either just cut off at the top section and the rest of it remain, or if there
Is it in the 50 or?
It would be in the 35. I would
No,
guess.
35. Yeah, I would just trim it and leave it. So.
Okay, and then just going back to the plan. This area up in here is, there's no 35-foot line on the plan. So, but I'm assuming most of this here is the 35-foot, and I would recommend revegetating that area to reestablish the undisturbed 35-foot buffer, seeing as this is the redevelopment of the lots, an opportunity to restore that buffer vegetation. So I'd suggest including that as a condition that a landscape plan be provided to revegetate that area.
Okay.
anybody in the audience have any comments, questions on this project? Anybody on the, okay. Unless there's any further discussion among the board? I'd like to make a motion to approve the project for or the SE 83-2310 with the receipt of a revised plan and a landscaping plan showing the revegetation of the 35-foot buffer. And put a note in about the tree in the 35 as well. Would like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Great, thank you, Pat. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ellie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
Thank you, Karen.
Hey, Mr. Healy.
I'm not going yet.
Are you going out to dinner now, or that's why you're so dressed up, or you're just
Got one more.
for here, right?
We can't stand.
All right, next order of business, another amended order of conditions for SE 83-2253, Amy McIsaac, 24 Charles Street, Yarmouth, proposed removal and containment of soil beneath the house and within the existing foundation and construction of a new foundation wall to support the existing garage within the buffer zone to a coastal bank.
Some additional information.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Again, for the record, my name is Kieran Healy with the BSC Group, representing the owner, Amy McIsaac, and with us also is Dave Bennett, the engineer, working on this project. We have submitted amended order of conditions. You may remember last year we were here to get some renovations approved for the building. And during the renovations, it was discovered that there was some fire leak, and you're all familiar with it. It's been in front of you a few times to discuss. We now have a plan of attack on how to deal with this particular issue. I'll turn it over to Dave so he can go through the ins and outs of how we're going to deal with this.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, commissioners. I'm Dave Bennett. I am the licensed site professional that's directing the waste site cleanup on this, and the conceptual plan for the aggressive soil removal through the temporary relocation of the dwelling and the garage was based on a review of remedial alternatives, which was presented to the homeowner. And in order to put this misery to bed and to mitigate a problem that has been with us since this time last year, this is what is planned. I want to supplement your filing today. I have the written approval from the DEP, which I just received, and I asked Kelly if I may approach.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So if I may, I'll direct you to the, and it's up here. Okay, so this is the property again. You've seen this before. There was a small addition that was approved by the commission that's in here with the upgrade of the septic system, which has been completed. And during this is the area where the soil impact is, and it couldn't have been in a worse spot. It's right in the center of the house, under the chimney, which makes it very difficult for us to try to shore anything, to dig to any depth. There was an attempt that was made. They dug 10 yards of material. Unfortunately, that was not adequate to close the job. There's a active vapor mitigation system that allows for safe occupancy of the dwelling. And Ms. McIsaac does not want to have to live with that for the rest of her life and put a deed restriction on the property. So we are intending to pick up the house and roll it into this position and pick up the garage and move it into this position so that we can dig down 15 feet below grade in this area and about 10 feet below grade in the footprint of the house. We will remove and stockpile on site outside the 100-foot buffer
in this area, the clean overburden, which will segregate and test, and then we'll remove about 120 yards of contaminated soil assisted by dewatering into frac tank. We will then put a two-part chemical oxidation product in there. It's called Regenox, which then you can think of it as hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide reacts with petroleum hydrocarbons to produce water and carbon dioxide. So it's a nice product. The way the product is made is different from just pure hydrogen peroxide. It's a slow release compound. So all the issues with the violent reaction and handling are eliminated with this project. That needed the written approval from the DEP, which I have just given you. And this project has gone through the otherwise 21-day presumptive certainty. So we've met the MCP standards. There was an issue with this commission, and I thank you very much for extending the emergency orders that you did and the extension that you did to allow us to put this plan together. And so with your approval, we will start the soil removal or the remediation as soon as possible. Ready to put permits in through the building department for this work. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. I think the plan outlines the areas where, nothing has changed with regards to putting it back in. There is one minor change here. I really would need to bring that to your attention. In this area here, we want to expand that a little bit because they have an old type of stairway system that's there. And so in order to get code compliant stairway there, we need that little bit of an addition there in between the breezeway, breezeway between the main house and the garage. I think that's 99 square feet or 98 square feet, something like that.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Thank the commissioners. Any questions among the commission? Really, Ellie?
No, I do
Pat?
not. Thank you.
Paul? No, I think.
What an
No,
undertaking.
thank you.
Okay, Kelly?
I just have one question, and I think I asked this the last time you're here, so I apologize. I can't remember the answer. The dewatering to the frac tank, that water is taken off site, or is that being discharged on site? Because are you saying you're removing the?
Yes. Excuse me. We have the approvals now, or we did from very early for 200 yards of material, which we moved about 10 yards of material. So that 115 yards more fits in that originally 200. We had 2,500 gallons of water that we were going to manage, and that would go off-site for remedial waste, of course.
Okay.
I think it goes to Olson's greenhouses, and they distill it and use it for, they distill the oil up and use it for heating greenhouses, and then reuse the water as like chiller water in high rises. So it's a recycling rather than disposal. But it will be held temporarily in a frac tank to accumulate it. So to dewater, we want to pump it into the frac tank, and then we'll have a vac truck come in, suck it out, and take it off site. So that'll all be copied in the public record reports, which the town administrator, the health department, and yourselves would be privy to. It's all private public record documentation, and certainly happy to have anybody by there while we're working, but this would be a very active construction site for what I hope will be about a 4-week period.
And that's coming up shortly, did you say, as soon as you have the building permits?
When COVID, we have no idea how quickly the building permits will be released, but as soon as we can.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Anybody in the audience have any comments, questions? Anybody? Anybody on the?
Thank you for addressing this so completely. It's very, very important.
Sorry, I had to go through all of it you as well. That's
Yeah, it's pretty horrible.
all set. Okay. Does somebody like to make a motion? Let's see, we are making a motion to just with the amended order with the original conditions, right? I'd like to make that motion.
So moved, Ellie.
Thank you, Ellie. A second. Thank you, Paul. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously.
Thank you so much. So the original order of conditions will not be reissued. It's just
We'll issue an amended order of conditions. It'll
we will, and
include,
I'll just have the same.
they'll just
conditions.
include any conditions that related to the original order, and it doesn't sound, there wasn't any new
Yeah, there's
conditions that were
nothing
being
really here.
added.
And we record that.
But
and
we just include the new plan, reference this additional plan.
So our contractor will be reaching out to you for
For a
the,
building permit
Yeah.
sign off? Yeah.
all right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Wonderful evening.
All right.
Thank you, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Karen?
It's close.
All right, next order of business is a stormwater permit application, again, continued from most recently December 2nd, 2020 for SW 2021-002, Evans Cohen 125, 133, Route 6A, Yarmouth, proposed redevelopment of existing commercial site, including parking, drainage, and septic improvements, existing building at number 125 to be converted to a doctor's office, existing 133 will have minimal improvements, including new utility connectors, and we have just received today a request for continuance to January 6th, 2022. Do I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Pat, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next order of business, we're moving on to enforcement orders, 43 Medina Drive, unpermitted vegetation removal within the buffer zone.
Mr. Chairman, I need to recuse myself from this hearing.
All right, let the record show that Commissioner Bishop has recused himself. All right, so thank you for coming in. I'm gonna first turn it over to Kelly and let her give a presentation as to what's going on, and then we'll turn it over to you, ask any questions that we may have, and then go from there, okay?
Thank you. So I received a complaint about vegetation removal within the buffer zone to the pond at this property. I contacted the property owners who agreed to meet me on the site so that we could take a look at the buffer area there. So these photos are taken at the property that show the buffer zone to the pond. It has a number of pine trees mainly, and then basically no undergrowth apart from the very edge of the pond here. So I just compared that back to the images that were taken for a previous RDA for vegetation work at the property. And they showed obviously more significant undergrowth at that point. There was an approval given for some removal, which by my interpretation of what was requested and approved is the items that were tagged with the pink flags that you can see. And I'll just try and zoom out a little so you can see some that show greater extent. So it does show there is some smaller vegetation through here, but then more significant buffer vegetation along that slope down to the pond. So there's obviously been some more extensive clearing done within the 35-foot setback, which is why we are here to address that.
Okay, anybody from the commission have any questions? You haven't written an enforcement order yet, right?
No, I haven't yet.
No questions? Right, so do you understand why, what the issues are at this point, the clearing of the?
I do. We
Okay.
got,
And was that you who did it, or did you do it as the homeowner, or did you?
I hired people to do the majority of it, but I will say, if you read the original, that I was given, it didn't, I don't know, I interpreted it that we could clear mostly saplings, invasives, campfires,
And tag trees.
and
Okay,
tag
when
trees,
was that?
but
When was that done? Oh, I'm sorry.
in,
So these were, the RDA was from, was it 2015?
well, I bought the house in 2015. It was probably 2015.
Yeah, 2015, there was some hardscape improvements that were done at the property.
Right.
So it was from around that time frame, and the work description on there was a landscape plan requesting removal of catbrier saplings and other vegetation that is tagged and shown in the attached photos. So to me, that was fairly clear that it was what had been flagged on the photos that were shown. Minimal vegetation, landscape removal, native plants throughout the property, no plans to clear cut in back area near the pond.
No, that's clear. Yeah, that's clear cut then. No pun intended. Okay, so I mean, it clearly states that former determination clearly states that there was supposed to be no clearing, like, and it specifically said no clear cutting on the back by the pond. So, yeah, I think that was relatively clear in that regard. I mean, it's very important that we keep at least that 35-foot buffer. That's the thing that the commission always aims to keep as the fully vegetated area. It's important not only for helping keep your soil stable so you don't lose the bank and have it erode into the pond, but it's also important then for keeping any of the nutrients from running into the pond and creating water quality issues as well. Does anybody else have any other questions or recommendations for the enforcement order? I think a standard landscape plan with revegetation, a revegetation plan for the 35 would be in order. Anybody else need anything else in association with that? All right.
Under an enforcement order?
Yeah, we'll do an enforcement order. Let's see, so we're at the end of December. Let's see, April, March. I would aim for like March, maybe March 15th for a plan.
To allow for spring planting.
And then get spring planting by May 31st or May 15th, whichever you want to go with.
So March 15th for a restoration plan for May 31st completion.
Right.
So we could schedule it for review of that plan on
The first one in April, probably.
April 7th. Is that going to be enough time? That should be enough time because that leaves the rest of April and May, June.
Yeah,
Well, you're running
I mean,
by the end of May. April 7th meeting.
I mean, you could probably back it up to do a March 1st deadline for the plan
Um,
and then have a hearing in March.
So we have a March 10 deadline for the March 17 meeting. So we could do that, or we could do the April 7 and the deadline for that meeting is the 24th.
Yeah, I think we should do the March 10th then and
March
have the plan.
The March
reviewed.
10 deadline for the March 17 meeting.
hearing.
And that's for 35 foot from the edge of pond, right?
Right. Okay, so do you understand what we're asking for? So we're going to be.
Oh, you need to.
Right, so what Kelly's going to do is she'll issue what's called an enforcement order. It's something that it doesn't get recorded against your deed or anything, but it is a legally binding document. So we're telling you that you need to do certain things. And so those certain things will be that you have somebody provide what's called a restoration planting plan. And that will address the restoration of the 35-foot buffer.
So from the pond, 35 feet. So
back.
that's basically where the lawn starts, correct?
Yeah, I would assume, yeah, based on, I think that was the notice, the work line limit from the previous.
Okay, so that makes sense then. And so that we would expect you to submit that plan to the commission for review by March 10th. It would be reviewed at the March 17th hearing.
Okay.
And then the idea is that the plantings would be put in no later than May 31st of 2022.
Okay. And that would
Okay.
be for a mix of undergrowth
Right.
plants.
Yeah, so we are, just so you understand, we are going to be looking for a mix of native species, native plant species. You can help, you want to start looking and talking to whoever is going to be doing the plan. If you want to do a sketch plan, is that acceptable? Okay, so you can start looking at the Cape Cod Cooperative Extension Service. If you just go in there and Google Cape Cod native plants.
Yeah, I have a list.
And so that'll give you a whole list of different things you might want to consider. The commission does want to see a relatively good vegetative height diversity. So, planting bunches like, some ground cover, some small shrubs, some taller shrubs, that sort of thing, and a few trees to mix in as well. And then we'll go from there. All right. Okay. Who was the landscaper you got to do the work?
Originally, I hired somebody to come in and cut trees, and he had the information, and he had done other neighbors, so that's where I got his name. So he was a professional.
Who was that? Who did the work then? That's the one who did the clearing?
I can't think of his last name. Chris.
I don't
He's
remember.
from Wareham. It's called A Notch Above is the name of the
Tree service.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
But he doesn't do work on the Cape anymore because we had neighbors called him after this past storm, and he said he won't come to the Cape anymore because he's in Wareham and he had too much work, on that side of the bridge.
All right. If you have any other contact information, that would be good. That if you could just forward that to Kelly as well.
Okay.
All right. Because we may want to consider a fine for him as well. If we can get contact information for that.
Okay.
All right.
So I'll just have, I'll either draw it out or have somebody draw out that whole area within scale and just come back. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Very good. You're all set. Everybody good in the commission? Would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Paul. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously 5-0. Thank you. Next order of business is another enforcement issue for 60 Camelot Road for unpermitted vegetation removal within the buffer zone. And let the record show that Commissioner Bishop has rejoined us. And do we have anybody?
The person, unless you're representing them, I assume not.
You're not representing, okay.
They're in Florida, and I had suggested that they find someone local to represent them or attend remotely, but I don't see anyone in the audience. So I can discuss it in their absence and we can issue something, or do they need to be? They've been given the opportunity, they were sent the agenda.
Are they going to be back from Florida?
I think they're gone for the winter.
For the winter.
Oh, sorry, not Florida. They're in, not that it matters, they're in Savannah.
don't care.
Sicily.
Somewhere warm.
All right, so I think what I'd rather do then, I think if you would just write an issue or issue an enforcement order, and we'll review the enforcement order, and they can join us
So I'll
Um,
draft an enforcement order, send them a copy and.
then have them join us.
Join the next meeting with either a representative in person or.
Yeah, I don't want to just do it all like without having any representation. So
They can Zoom us.
Do you want to hear it? Do you want to see it at all, or do you want to just wait until they? Before you just do it all in one go?
I would just do it all in one. Yeah. So do you want to put that off until the 2nd in January, or
Actually, yes, because I'm not going to be at the January 6th.
maybe taking your position?
I. 20th.
That's the 20th?
Yeah.
Okay, so would somebody like to make a motion to review an enforcement order and continue this item to January 20th, 2022?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Tom.
Thank you, Tom. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Opposed? Okay, we'll continue that to January 22nd. Right. I see there's one lone individual in the audience, so maybe we'll, instead of making you wait through everything else, is there something we can help you with?
No.
You're just watching the sausage be made? Okay.
Inexpensive entertainment.
Yeah, you can always watch us on TV, and at least you can sit back and have popcorn and things too. All right, so our next order of business then is moving on to election for commission positions. So we have 3 officers. Are we doing boards as well, or? Okay. So I understand that Ms. Ellie would like to give up her responsibilities as secretary. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So that means we need somebody new to be a secretary. It's not that difficult, folks. It's, if you talk to Ellie, it was a fun time all the way around.
Then why is she giving it up?
Because she wants
Getting my
to,
arm twisted is why.
she wants other people to be able to experience the joy of being an officer. That's all. Paul.
Yeah, I'll be happy to be considered for that position.
Here's a volunteer. Okay, I knew we'd get somebody suckered in there that way. No, it's not that heavy a workload. But
thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul. Is there anybody else who would like to run for secretary as well? All right. If not, would somebody like to make an official motion for Paul as the secretary?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second, Tom.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Opposed? Congratulations, you are the new secretary.
Where's the pay?
Double what you're earning now.
You actually end up paying $5 every hearing. You have to pay for all the paper. So, all right.
NFL contract, you get so much guaranteed and so much performance.
You're guaranteed nothing, and well, you're guaranteed to pay back as much as you are. So. All right. Vice Chair, Tom has, after many years, decided he does not want to continue with that position. Would somebody like to either volunteer for the position or nominate some other poor fool that doesn't know any better?
I think I just got the nod from Tom over there.
Tom's nodding to Ellie.
Yeah.
Okay, Ellie, do you agree?
I agree.
All right. Is there anybody else who would like to run for vice chair? Tom, you sure you don't want to?
Ellie will do a marvelous job, I guarantee you.
Okay. All right. So would somebody like to make Tom, you made the motion.
Yes.
Okay. Is there a
So
second?
moved.
Is there a second for Ellie as vice chair?
Second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Sorry.
Oh, you're bad.
You clearing
Yeah,
your throat
bad.
there?
Yeah,
It would be either 5-1 or 6 with
Six and a
the
cough.
throat clear. All right, that leaves the chairman's position. Would somebody like to take the chairman's position?
No chance.
Yeah.
You want it, Ted?
You don't want to do that, Pat?
No, no, I want to nominate
All
you.
right, well, I will, as long as Kelly wants to put up with me for another year, I would like to continue that. I'm willing to do that, if that's all right.
Certainly is.
Let's see, I need a motion to nominate me. Is
So moved.
there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. I heard 5-1. All right, board position or representatives positions. The
I think we just
CP,
have the two, right? We have the Water Resources Committee and the
CPC.
CPC Committee.
Okay.
There's none others on this.
Yes, there is.
Oh, no, you're right. The Land Disposition Committee. I forgot about that.
A what?
Sorry.
Land Disposition Committee.
I didn't even know we had that committee.
I haven't
A
either.
land disposition. Are you on that? Are you the representative? of
I'm the
that?
chairman. Yes.
Are
and
you
I'm
representing the commission on that, or is that?
representing the
Yeah.
Conservation Commission on that.
Yeah, I thought that was the.
Have you had any
Good
meetings
job.
of this?
We've
Or
had a number of meetings.
I didn't
We
even
haven't
know.
had any updates.
I was gonna say, like,
We're very
you
tired.
know, I'm sitting here asking Tom gives updates, you know, and then if you ask Paul gives updates on CPC.
You never asked me.
Well, like, we didn't even know.
We didn't even know.
Like, is anybody else representing the Conservation Commission or any other board?
What about the water resources?
Yeah, Water Resources Committee.
Yeah, I think I speak for this.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, you do.
Steel group.
Would you
You're
like
not
to
getting out of that
continue
one.
to do that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay,
Sure.
so we'll get that. Would somebody like to make a motion for Tom to represent to Water Resources?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Tom continues with that one. Paul, you were the CPC. Do you want to, are you,
I'd be happy to continue. It's fun.
okay? I mean,
Nominate Paul.
Second.
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Here you get to spend money. Yeah.
Sorry, who made that
big
motion? I
bucks.
missed that one.
I
Tom
heard
did.
Tom did it, and then
And
A second.
Rick seconded.
thank you. And Land Disposition Committee.
And land.
This is a
very
good job. We didn't even know
I am
it.
going- My first rule or my
Need to
first
give us an update.
my first declaration is next meeting in January, you must give us an update as to what the
You lost the
board is.
words then.
Yeah, what the board is.
May I ask,
What have you been doing for the last year and a half?
may I ask that I hold off my report till the second meeting in the month
We can
because
do that.
we have a land disposition meeting on the 11th.
Okay, what time is that meeting?
Double secret.
Okay, that's also, we'll wait for that report on January 20th,
20.
right?
I think I'll be out of town, so that's good.
You'll be out of town that date, so you won't be able to make the,
That's why I made the change.
So was there a vote for that one? We didn't vote.
I don't think he's taking it seriously enough. He's
Very seriously.
all right. So would somebody like to make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Motion.
I'll second.
Seconded, all right.
Proud of Rick.
So Tom and Ellie, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Who knew we even had that committee? Or that we were even represented by that committee?
Hey, how long? It's been about a year now.
Just about a year, yeah.
It's funny though that I thought now that I think about it, it probably should have come through the commission. to appoint
say, it's like-
somebody to it.
Shouldn't we have voted as to whether or not we wanted somebody like him representing us? I mean,
The commission did, as a matter of fact.
did we really?
Yes,
Was I,
it was-
was I-
Okay, there you
was
go.
that the one meeting I didn't appear?
Maybe it was
at?
during COVID. It's all a bit of a blur.
Or was it done remotely and nobody was paying attention at that
So
point?
remotely, nobody knows.
No, actually, I think that was done at least 2 years ago. And the town didn't get the committee assembled for another year. So that's why
Who is on the committee?
I really can't just,
Which information?
None of them know.
it's double secret.
You know what? We'll talk about that later on, so it's at some point off air, I think. Approval of meeting minutes for December 2nd, 2021. Before I forget, I have to thank you for everybody who was serving. So we are looking forward to a new year coming forward here. Let's go back to the meeting minutes. Did somebody read the minutes?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the minutes as written with a small correction to, on page 2, last paragraph, a very minor typo.
Okay, is there a second?
Search for it.
Got it. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries unanimously. Other business not reasonably anticipated. Anybody from the board have anything to add, update, inquire about?
Yeah, how come we haven't gotten an update from Rick's?
That would be a very good.
Troublemaker as a vice chair, I did.
I think we should form a subcommittee and do a major investigation on this one, but. Anything else?
We don't meet regularly.
Anything from Kelly?
Only that at this stage, I'm not planning on being at the January 6th meeting because it's my daughter's birthday, and I don't think she'll forgive me if I missed it.
Great.
All I can say is that David Bernstein and I were both here on our anniversaries, so
I know, but
I was too.
I'm just saying, and on my wife's birthday too.
it just shows my dedication to my
I was
family
gonna say.
and your lack thereof. But if we do have a light agenda, then I will come because it'll be a quick meeting and I can get home for birthday dinner.
You could pop in on the.
Yeah.
Why don't you do it that way?
So, or on the, if we have a lot of applications, then I don't really want to throw Heidi to the wolves. So we'll just have to look.
As long as she can do that, then we can take care of everything.
And we'll have
else.
everything ready in advance. So it's really just to have everything set up. And we don't have a deadline until next week because we have that extra week in between. So I won't really know until next week as to what the agenda is going to look like. So I'll let you know after that. So that is all I have, other than to wish you all a Merry Christmas
All
and
right.
Happy Holidays.
Anybody else? If not, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn at 7:08.
Right, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned at 7:07.
7:07.